So my primary job is a wheat extension specialist, so wheat is my primary responsibility, but we do have a few ancillary studies, as I call them, where we're looking at other small grains, and behind me is some oats that we have planted here. So I've done other small grains, including rye, triticale, oats, barley, and then some spring wheat. And so I thought, since this is here and we had the opportunity, I'd at least kind of catch you up to date a little bit on some of the other small grains work that we've been doing as well. It's not a big part of our research portfolio, but we are doing a little bit with it. So I thought this could be an opportunity just to catch everybody up to date on where we're at and what we're doing. And I do have some data for those of you that may be interested in some of these other small grains that I'll go over with you. So let me start out with with the oats behind me. The reason that this project started, it actually started with the Michigan Craft Beverage Council. And so you might wonder, why is the Michigan Craft Beverage Council interested in oats? But apparently there's some brewers that are interested in oats for making whatever specialty brew products that they're making. And so they actually funded a research project to look at different oat varieties. I have a second study funded by the Michigan Craft Beverage Council looking at winter wheat varieties, and then management, agronomic management of those varieties. And the reason for these two studies is because what the maltsters and what the brewers want is a little bit different than maybe how we want to grow our small grains. They want something that is good quality, so like disease-free and very low protein. They want the lowest protein they can get, like below 9%, 8% is like a target for them, what they want. So how do we, if we're going to grow these small grains for them, what do we have to do in order to meet that low protein target? What management do we have to do? There's something we have to reduce the application of. Nitrogen, yes. Okay, so if we reduce nitrogen, trying to get a low protein, what happens to our yield? Goes down, right? Yes. So the reason for doing the study is to try to figure out, okay, where's the happy medium between a reasonable yield for a grower and then meeting a protein target that the brewers can live with. Okay, so that was kind of why those two projects started. And so that kind of started this project here, because apparently they're looking at oats also. I don't know what they make oats into. Rye goes into bourbon, is that right? Oh, whiskey, okay. What's bourbon made out of? Corn, okay. And then there's, I'm not an enthusiast of that stuff, so I don't know, but you guys may know better than me. But anyway, so they are looking at oats. They're looking at rye as well. We have some barley trials for them, for this craft beverage group. I also wanted to mention we have some triticale. Triticale is becoming a little more popular as a forage. So in parts of the state where we have livestock operations, we'll see a little more of that planted. So we actually have one of the fact sheets in your handout has data on some triticale varieties. And so that information is in there for you if you have any interest in that. So we also have some variety trial results where we have some lodging data and disease resistance data and height scores and some things like that for some of these other small grains. And I just wanted to make you aware of that so that you would know that those resources are there. Like I said, it's not a big part of our project, but we have been doing some work in there, so I thought I'd at least make you aware of it. I wanted to introduce Paul from KWS because we also, one of the things that we have back there in that corner, you see the taller stuff, that's hybrid rye. And I wanted to talk a little bit about hybrid rye and then hybrid wheat, because if we could get to hybrid wheat, you know, we hear about hybrid vigor in corn, right? Well, can we get that same hybrid vigor in wheat if we can produce the hybrid seed? So can I bounce a couple questions off of you? So how is hybrid rye created? How do you make hybridization? How do you do hybridization in rye?
Hybrid rye is just like corn. You have to have a male and a female, so we develop lines on a female side and to cross with male lines. So it's the same kind of process. The only thing rye is open cross pollinated, where wheat is, I mean, you're going to talk about a hybrid wheat. Wheat is self pollinated, so the crossing is a little different. But KWS has been working on it since in the 80s, so they perfected the hybrid rye. So it's got a male, and it's got the female is sterile, male sterile. So when you put the female in the field and put the male and intermingle it, you end up with a hybrid. So you have a pure line, basically hybrid after that. So it's just gives you a hybrid, again, gives you the other things, right? The hybrid vigor. You always hear about hybrid vigor. Yeah, better roots, better standability, better disease, all those things. Drought tolerance goes into the hybrids. So that's kind of what you'll expect. So hybrid rye is OP rye on steroids. So you're looking at right now, our top yield on hybrid rye in Washington was 240 bushels last year. In most of this area, hopefully Dennis gets 100 to 120 bushels of hybrid rye. You're going to ask what to do with it, and that's what we're working on. It's a distiller's market and a feed market. It works very well in pigs. So we're trying to develop that market. So if you're interested, it'll be back. I'll be back there too a little bit later.
So that's an important discussion, because if we are going to get to a spot where we have hybrid wheat and we have all those same vigor and benefits, we've got to figure out how to get there with wheat and how the hybridization process works. It's very difficult with a self-pollinated crop to do that. With corn, it's easy. You cut the tassels off and you've eliminated the male pollen right there. It's not that easy with wheat. So have you been working with hybrid wheat at all, or?
Yeah, KWS, Pioneer, BASF, and Syngenta are probably the four that are working on hybrid.
And do you have any idea how far out there are from perfecting it?
I was working with Saginaw earlier. It was 2018, then it was 2020, then it was, so most projections are almost out to 2030 now. So I don't know, anywhere from now into 2030. So that's kind of the projections. I think BASF has probably got the best, it's doing the most best work right now. So we'll see. KWS will come in, we'll try it.
And University of Nebraska has also been doing quite a lot of work on hybridization on wheat as well. So I think there could be a future for hybrid wheat. We're just not quite there on it yet, but it would be really nice to be able to get some of that hybrid vigor that we can get in corn and rye also into our wheat. But so that's just kind of an update on where we're at with that.
Interject on that too. The reason why wheat is so difficult, because of being self-pollinated, it's very hard to produce. It's not that they don't have hybrid wheats, they just can't produce it economically enough to sell it to you as a grower. It's just very expensive seed because they don't get the yields. With hybrid rye, we get probably 70-80 bushels of seed, which is gives us some economics. Where wheat, they're not that high yet, so it's very costly. So that's why it hasn't come to you yet.
Okay. So the last thing I wanted to kind of wrap up and talk about with these spring cereals, or kind of other cereals that we've been doing work on, is spring wheat. Every year I get calls, guys that had drown out fields are going to replant, or they didn't get all the fields planted that they wanted in the fall. Can I plant spring wheat? And so it kind of is a market thing. There are parts of the country that grow a lot of spring wheat, and there's a market developed there. Spring wheat mills differently than winter wheat does, and so in order for there to be wide-scale adoption of spring wheat in Michigan, we need adapted varieties, and then two, we need milling, like the desire from the milling industry to have these spring wheats. The characteristics are a little bit different. They're generally a lot higher protein, so they mill differently. In the last group, I had a question. I had some drown-out spots. Can I just plant spring wheat in there and then just harvest it all? And I was like, no, you can't do that. Unless you have white wheat and you're planting white spring wheat in there, then you probably could. But otherwise, do not intermingle it. Correct me if I'm wrong, we got a couple of representatives here. Nobody in the milling industry wants intermingled spring and winter, right? So
we don't want the spring white and winter white either.
okay, so not even that. Okay, so from a logistics standpoint, now a grain elevator is going to have to dedicate a bin to spring wheat if we're going to do this. And it just, the logistics are not all in place to do it yet. I always get calls about spring wheat, and can I plant it? Is it an option? The other big reason, and besides having adapted lines or adapted varieties and having a market developed for it, is the yield. And in one of your handouts here is a variety trial on spring wheats that we did here. And the top yield was 63.9 bushels to the acre. Okay, so it yields about 2/3 of what winter wheat does. I know some years, if you don't get all the wheat planted you wanted, livestock industry needs it for straw, a place to spread manure, and those kind of things. We're just not quite there. If you want to grow spring wheat, you can for feed, but it's not a milling quality wheat that we need here in Michigan as of yet. Where the future is on that, I don't know. But right now, we're not in a spot where we're going to be looking at that. So does anybody have any questions about spring wheat? Okay. Does anybody have any questions about any of the other cereals that we've got planted? So I also get a lot of calls from these folks that want to plant a little bit of wheat, and then they want to mill it themselves, and they want to make bread for their family, and pizza dough and all of these other things. And there is interest by consumers for that kind of stuff. It's a real specialty type market. It's not something that I think will be wide scale. You're not going to see big fields of those kind of things planted, because it's so niche oriented, and a lot of times it's just families wanting to do this to try to think, I'm all right, I'm trying to do a better job of feeding my family, because I'm growing it myself, I know where it came from, and so on. So I don't see anything right now in the pipeline where we're going to be looking at some specific protein level here in Michigan. Now we got to maintain at least some level of protein in our grain in terms of quality, but I don't see anything from a food perspective. I think that's still going to remain niche. I don't. Do either of you have any comments about that at all? Okay, all right. I'm not aware of any movement by where mills are like, oh my gosh, we have to change what we're doing. Okay, so yeah, so that's kind of where that's at right there. Any other questions?